Welcome back, y'all, to another episode of Not for Nothing. I'm your host, Cass B, and we are in episode 5, I think. 5? Is that right? No, 6. No, 7? No. I don't know. 5. I think it's 5. Yeah, let's go with 5. I think it's 5. Welcome to episode 5 of Not for Nothing. This is the long-awaited Q&A. I'm going to be answering all of your dying questions, even the ones I didn't get in the DMs, but I know that you're dying to ask, have asked, are asking, and continue to ask. If you have any questions about, I wonder where she got this, or I wonder where this is from, or I wonder what Bible she's using, 9 times out of 10, I'm just going to be really real, 9 times out of 10, if you just scroll down on my videos, I have made a video about the Bible version that I'm using, and it's really, really simple. It's just right there. And I have everything linked in my bio. I have Amazon storefront links. I have, a Shop My link. Every single thing you could possibly think of is there. If you've checked all those things and it's still not there, then you can call me out and send me a DM and ask me. But I swear to you, everything is there. I promise. Unless I've missed one or two very, very small things. But I spend a lot of time on those things. So I'm going to guess that it's there. I'm going to do my best to back up any advice or anything like that I'm going to give you guys with biblical truth, so that it's not just my advice just out here. It's actually biblical truth. But at the same time, a lot of the questions are kind of like, Cassidy, what would you do in my situation? So I'm going to give that aspect, but then also try my best to relate it back to the Bible. So yeah, here's my iPad. I'm going to be using my iPad, and then here is my Bible for everybody wondering the type of Bible it is. It is a big fat one, that's for sure. This is the Holy Bible ESV version from Hosanna Revival, and it is absolutely stunning. I use this a lot because a study Bible is the way to go, 1000%. So let's start off strong. I have about 18 questions here. We are going to go off of those, and then we're going to check my TikTok messages to see if I have any more this morning. So let's go. First up, I'm going to keep these anonymous too, so yeah, these are going to be anonymous. Hi, I just want to ask a question. I know God's word tells us to live in the present, but if you're thinking about the future in a God's got me kind of way, instead of worrying about it, is it still bad to do so? It's a silly question, and it's totally okay if you don't answer it. God will give me clarification in his time. Thank you. Have a blessed day. That was really sweet. So I am very much an anxious person. Everybody knows that about me. I'm very anxious. I literally hate thinking about the future. But I have come to a conclusion that I think I prefer to think about it not in a God's got me, I can do whatever I want to kind of way, but actually I don't fear for what comes tomorrow. I don't fear for what the future brings. I don't fear for an anxiety attack or a panic attack or whatever comes in the future. I know that I will be okay because of what I've seen in the past. Now, there's a lot of Christians that live by that mentality of God's got me, so I'm fine, and I don't need to worry about that because, X, Y, and Z. I think that's great. If that gives you peace at night, it gives you peace at night, right? We all have our different ways of thinking about it. But at the end of the day, I think that I am able to have peace about my future because I know what has been done in my past. So I can look to the past and know God saved me from, full-blown panic attacks almost every day. He saved me from mental health problems. He saved me from, X, Y, and Z, and I could go on and on. I am now stronger every day because I know what God has done for me and what he will do for me, because the will do part comes from what I've seen him do in the past, if that makes any sense. Let's continue. I also just want y'all to know how normal and safe and chill of a place this is on this podcast, because literally trying to scarf down Greek yogurt before I have to leave for my grandma's house, and it just spilt it all over the counter. So that's great. Let's continue. Hey, I know you'll probably take a while to respond, but I had a really important question to ask. As someone who got R-worded, does that mean it won't be the same if I wait until marriage and I'm no longer pure? Is it a sin even if I was forced to? Sorry, that really made me emotional for a second. I want you to know from the bottom of my heart and from God's heart, that does not make you any less than. It does not change your decision. If something like that happened to you and it was not your decision, that does not affect how God sees you. It does not affect how I see you. It does not affect how anybody else should see you. When you're saving yourself for marriage, that's a covenant between you and God. That's a promise between you and God. You're promising that you are going to stay pure until marriage for that person that God has for you. If somebody took it upon themselves to take that away from you, that was purely not your decision. You did not decide to do that. Thus, your commitment to God has not changed. It has not failed. It has not come back void. It is still in process. It's still valid. It's still real, right? You're still beautiful. You're still chosen. You're still God's child, God's daughter. He's proud of you. There's nothing that makes him weirded out by it. But it's also nothing that he didn't see already coming. And that's really hard to articulate as a Christian of like, why do bad things happen to good people? It's really bad to articulate and it's hard, right? It's something hard to process. But I want you to know that there will be a bigger reason for this. One day you will get to a point in your life where you realize, I went through that because of this. It was not for nothing. But at the same time, I want you to know that does not interfere with how God sees you. He still sees you blameless. He still sees you covered in his cloak. He still sees you pure. Even if somebody took that away from you, you are still pure in God's eyes. I never want you to think that you aren't, because that was not your decision. And I'm so, so sorry that that happened to you. And that's not fair. It's not. But we serve a God who is a just God, and God will use that for his glory and for his kingdom. And he will use that to grow you and to grow your story. He will never give you anything that you cannot handle, but he will never give you anything that won't be for his glory too. A lot of the valleys, a lot of the hardships that we walk through, they suck, right? They just flat out, I'll say it, they suck. There's things that I walk through and I'm like, why am I going through this? This is horrible. Like, I hate this. It makes me feel a certain way. I'm anxious about it, whatever. And the Lord reminds me that you're doing this for me. You're doing this for my people. Think about it like this. I was a 9-year-old girl who got exposed to pornography on the playground of a Christian school, mind you, of a Christian school. And at the time, I didn't know that other women struggled. So I was like, oh, I'm the only girl on the planet that struggles with this. And I had a lot of other issues that followed that you could probably imagine and put 2 and 2 together here. But I want you to know that none of that, even to this day, none of that has ever questioned God's love for me, has ever questioned God's purity for me. Even though I've seen things and I've heard things and I've watched things that would mark me unpure too. I mean, to the outside world or to anybody else would say that I'm unpure. And I've done things in relationships and I've gone too far and I've made mistakes. I know that God forgives me because his grace is enough. That's what the cross was for. But by the same token, if something was done to you that you did not do to yourself, it was forced upon you, that is not on you to bear. God is a just God, and he will handle that person, that sin, that whatever that person just committed against you. He will handle that. That has already been handled. But I want you to know that there's nothing that's separating you. Nothing can ever separate you from the love of God, correct? Nothing ever. But also nothing can ever make you unpure in his eyes. You will never be nasty. You will never be used. You will never be R-worded in his eyes. He does not use labels. God is not a God of labels. If he was to be, it would literally be beautiful, chosen, daughter, unique, my one. It would be that. That would be your labels. But instead, he's not a God of labels. Thank goodness, because Lord knows I'd have a lot, as would the next person, right? I'll be praying for you. And on this DM, it doesn't even say your name. It just says child of God. And that's all that you are. Cling to that. You are a child of God. You're not what has happened to you. You're not what will happen to you. You are simply a child of God, and that is beautiful. And I pray that you can see yourself from God's eyes. He thinks that you're beautiful. He thinks that your story is beautiful, and he has a reason and a purpose for this. And I know it's so hard, and it is very, very unfair that happened to you. And I would rather anything else but that happen to people, especially girls. But know that God does not see you any different. There's nothing that can ever separate you from God's love, anything that can separate you from God. Hi. I have recently started following you, and you have been a true light in my new walk with the Lord. I saw your video about saying comment questions for a Q&A, but wanted to personally reach out. I grew up knowing who he was, but never had a close relationship with him. Now that my name has been called by him, period, queen, nothing feels like it can be the same. I feel different, if that makes sense. I grew up living a life of sin and bad choices, and I'm ready to turn that around. Do you have any advice for me on this new journey at 24 years old? On another note, I watched your Corinthians 13 video and felt really compelled to take a look at my 5-year relationship and realized I deserve more and ended things. It has been extremely hard, but I feel in my soul that the Lord has something better waiting for me. Thank you for sharing his word and inspiring so many of us. Ooh, you guys, I didn't know this was going to be emotional. I think, let me explain why I'm emotional and then let me answer your question. First of all, welcome to the kingdom of God. You are welcome here. You are invited here. We're all cheering for you. It's a party. We're partying that you're here now. And so welcome. I'm proud of you for making that choice. It must have been hard, and it is hard, right? Going from a sinful life to this life. And it is different. You're right. You hit the nail on the head. It is different. Because you are different. You are set apart. You are now a new creation in heaven and on earth. I want to recommend a song to you. It's called Different by Micah Tyler. I don't need to recognize the man in the mirror. I don't want to trade your plan for something familiar. I can't waste a day. I can't stay the same. I want to be different. I want to be changed till all of me is gone and all that remains is a fire so bright the whole world can see that there's something different, so come and be different in me. It's a beautiful song, but it kind of reminded me of what you were saying, is that everything is different when you give your life over to Christ, because he takes over every area of your life. Thank God, right? I'm proud of you for making that decision. And when I first shared my relationship on social media years ago, I was convinced at the time that the Lord was telling me to continue. And I think that he was. I firmly believe that the 3.5 years that I spent with this person, I will never regret. They were some of my favorite of my life, and I'm very, very grateful for that person. But there came a point where I had to reevaluate a lot in my life, and it came down to me making a really, really hard decision. And I personally had to decide whether it was time to take a step back or continue. And the decision to take a step back was the hardest one I've ever had to make in my entire life, right? Because everyone around you is like, what are you doing? This is the perfect relationship. You're ruining this. You're going to throw all that away. 3.5 years is a waste of time. And your mental health or your brain is telling you, well, you're wasting all, that's just such a waste. You're back to square one now. You were so much closer to engagement and marriage and having kids, and now you're all the way back to square one and you have to start all over with somebody, right? And it's one of the hardest decisions that anybody can make. But while I made it, I knew that my future self would be proud of myself now. I knew that if there was any other girl out there that had any type of feeling that I had, she deserved to be set free of those doubts. She deserved to find freedom from that. She deserved to be happy. And I did it for the little Cassidy. I did it for the older Cassidy. And I did it for you guys. If any of you, were walking through something similar, that I can be a light of you don't have to stay if God's telling you not to, and you can see what else is out there. That's okay. And just because you're two Christians dating doesn't mean you have to get married and it has to be a thing. It doesn't. Sometimes it just falls apart. Sometimes you just aren't meant to be together, and that's normal, and it happens, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to be tough, and it's going to be really uncomfortable. But at the same time, I wanted to help other people realize that you don't have to stay in a relationship just to stay in it, just because the world says to. And knowing that, in a way, that was some type of motivation for you to find happiness again. And girl, I hope you're so happy. I wish you nothing but the best. And wow, thank you for sharing that. That was really sweet. It just is a reminder, that sometimes you doubt the decisions that you make. And I haven't ever had any doubts about the decision that I make, but sometimes the enemy will use that against me of wow, well, now you're back to square one and you just ruined all that time and all that stuff. But the Lord's you're helping so many people through that. And y'all don't even know the amount of DMs that I got about the breakup in general, being I needed to hear this. Now I'm questioning things because I didn't know Christians cannot have to marry the person that they're dating, and casual dating exists, and Not necessarily saying that mine was casual dating, because, 3.5 years is a little bit more than casual, but it can be a long-term relationship that you end, and that's okay. And you can both be Christian, and that's okay. And you're not called to marry every person, the first person that you date long-term, and, giving you the strength that you need to continue. So yeah, I hope that in a sliver of a way, I was able to help. So let's go back to the initial question. Do you have any advice for me on this new journey at 24 years old? Start reading your Bible. Get a devotional. Get a good devotional. Jesus Calling is a great one. I have everything linked on my storefront on Amazon and on Shopify. Get a good devotional. Get a good Bible. Get a good study Bible. Get a good notebook. Get some cool, cute highlighters. Get some cool pens. And then get a good book that you like to read. I like Louis Giglio books. I like Sadie Robertson books. I like Janine Amapola. I think I'm saying her name wrong. Janine's book. There's a lot of great authors out there. Lisa TerKeurst, I like her books too. There's a lot of great reading material out there. Matt Chandler. It just depends on how deep that you want to go. But I have all of my favorite Christian books linked in my bio too, so that you can go check them out. But I would get a good devotional. Jesus Calling is great when you're first starting out in your faith. I love it even now. Jesus Calling. Get a good study Bible. They don't have to be expensive. You can go on Amazon and get a cheap one. You can go to Walmart. You can go to Target. Get a good study Bible. It doesn't really matter the translation. ESV is great. NLT is great. NIV. You might want to steer away from like the New King James Version and King James versions, just because they're a little bit harder to understand. But get you a good to easy, ESV, NLT, NIV. I think I'm missing one. That's all that I can think of right now. I'm sure I'm missing one, but those are great to start off with. Get you a cute notebook, get you a cute little pen set and highlighter set from Amazon, super cheap, and girl, go to town. Wake up in the morning, spend time with Jesus, and it'll set the dictation for your entire freaking day. It'll be so good. And yeah, that's my advice. Start in the Gospels. If you want to read something particular, go to the Gospels. Start Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Just start from there. Some of my favorite books are like James, Ruth, Psalms, Proverbs. I mean, there's a lot to choose from in the Bible. Or get on a reading plan. Go to the Bible app. It's completely free. You can go on there and you can choose different plans that you want to read through, and they're really easy. They're all free, and you can pick some from Priscilla Shirer to Sadie Robertson to anybody and everybody on there. And some of them even have videos to go along with them. So highly recommend that too. But again, we're partying. We're so happy that you're here. Welcome to the family, and I'm very, very proud of you. This next one says, Hi. Can you please answer my burning question on your podcast? Burning question. Okay, here it is. What should I do if I'm in a relationship with a guy who comes from a Christian family but doesn't know God himself and fully pursues him? Should I help him grow? Okay, so this is a loaded question. And again, I don't know. I'm not God, right? Like, I can give you my advice and my 2 cents, but again, I'm not Jesus, so I can't tell you what to do. I can just give you my opinion. Dating an unbeliever, no matter how great their family is, no matter whatever, it's always going to be tense. It's always going to have tension. It's always going to have a push and a pull. There's always going to be an unequally yoked thing there. Now, when I made the video about being unequally yoked and not dating unbelievers, there were a lot of comments saying, well, I was a Christian. I started dating my unbeliever boyfriend, and then he changed and he became a Christian. There are a lot of scenarios like that. And if that's your case, that is wonderful. But I would not it's very mentally healthy to be aware to not enter a relationship being a savior role. Meaning, you should not be dating someone because they're an unbeliever and knowing that you can convert them. If you're entering a relationship where you're like, well, I can convert them, I can make them Christian, I can bring them to church, I can, all that stuff, that is the wrong intent. Now, if you enter in a relationship and you're like, I'd love to help you get to know the Lord, and like that is a side venture, if you will, of the relationship and of things flourishing between you guys, that's one thing. But if you enter in the relationship playing Jesus, that is not how a relationship is supposed to be. And also, he will not know how to correctly lead you and love you because he doesn't know how to be led and loved, because he doesn't know who love is, Jesus, right? Do I think that you should never date an unbeliever? My personal opinion is that if you are strong in your faith, you should find somebody that's equally as strong as you in your faith, because you will be pulling them forever, right? Unless they, become Christian or whatever. But that's, again, if you're relying on them to become Christian once you start dating them, that's unfair to them, right? Like that's putting so much pressure on them. It's not fair. but we should be looking for somebody who's running the race just as fast as we are, whose pace is the same, who loves Jesus, who is striving towards God, that we look over and we're like, oh my gosh, you're running the same pace as me, if not faster than me. And then, things start to flourish. Not we're looking back and be like, well, I can pull you up here, Now, he can come from here's the thing, is that I know great Christian guys who have a really, really messed up family background that aren't necessarily Christian and that are very, very far from the Lord. Then, on the other side, I know, really, really great Christian families who have really, really, really screwed up toxic sons who are really not so great guys. It starts with who you're dating, right? Because that's what's most important. You're going to be potentially living your life with this person. But also it's important to know and realize that you are marrying the family. And as much as I, love to be like, well, it's more the guy that you're dating. It's more the guy that you're going to marry. It's more, whatever. As much as I love to do that, I love to push out that quote. I love to, ignore the you marry the family thing. I did for a very long time. It's true. It's inevitable. You marry the family. And so if they are a great Christian guy and have a toxic family background, that's something that you're going to have to live with and be okay with for the rest of your life, potentially, if you want to marry this person. If they are a horrible guy and they have a great Christian family background, that's great too. But also you're living with the not great guy or you're living with the non-Christian guy, which, again, each to their own. If you have different convictions, you have different convictions. That's just my personal thing. If he doesn't know God himself and he's not pursuing God, I would ask the question to yourself, what is attractive to you about him then? If it's not his relationship with the Lord, if it's not the fact that, he has a strong faith foundation, is it his family that's attractive? Because you're not sleeping with his family every night in the same bed once you're married. Is it his looks? Because his looks will fade. Is it his humor? Because his humor may one day just not be funny anymore. It all boils down to who he is as a person, his characteristics, his fruit, because his fruit reveals who he is as a person. And if he's not pursuing God, if he has no interest in being a godly man for you and your potential family one day, then that would be a red flag to me. But again, I'm not God, so that's just my 2 cents. Somebody asked, what has led you to this point? Coca-Cola. Heartbreak. Independence. Maturity. Life lessons. Valleys. A lot of the things that I've walked through in my life, whether it's my pornography addiction, whether it's anxiety, whether it's panic attacks, whether it's mental health problems, whether it's heartbreak, whether it's grief, whether it's becoming independent, whether it's maturing, whether it's whatever, has all led to this moment, has all led to Not for Nothing, has all led to where I'm sitting here with a microphone and I'm talking to you about what has led me to this moment, right? I remember not so long ago, I was sitting down with my ex and I was talking to him about starting a podcast. And I was like, I think I want to start this. Like, I don't know what it's going to turn into, and I'm scared and I feel overwhelmed, but I know that the Lord's calling me to do it. And he was like, okay, just pray about it. And I was like, okay. So I start praying about it and I'm like, Lord, it's going to be a big financial investment. It's going to be a time investment, right? It's a lot to put on a podcast. It's a lot to edit a podcast. It's a lot on my plate. And I work a 9 to 5. I have friends. I have family. I have other plans outside of this. And it's going to be a lot, right? Without all that, I wouldn't be here. So I start praying about it to the Lord. And I'm like, Lord, it's overwhelming. It's going to be a big financial investment. It's going to be a lot to get me to the place where I'm producing a podcast. I'm hosting a podcast. It's going to be a lot, right? So I start praying about it. And I end up going on this work trip. And I go for a week, I'm praying through it, and I'm like, I'm really feeling led to do this political podcast. And I'm like, I'm going to start the political podcast. I'm going to do this. It's going to be like my way. Like, it's going to be so good. Start planning it all out. I have all the graphics made. I have the name made. I have everything done. And I get on the plane back, and I open up this book that I had gotten randomly for free at this convention. And on the top of the page, it says, "Never Be Quiet, Cassidy." And I lose it on the plane because I had wanted to do this political podcast because I wanted to hide myself. I wanted to not talk about pressing issues. I didn't want to talk about my faith necessarily. I didn't want to talk about what I believed. I didn't want to talk about whatever. because I was scared of what people thought. I thought that nobody would want to hear about it. I thought, nobody would care. And I open up this book and it literally says, "Never be quiet, Cassidy." And I'm like, what? I'll try to put a picture of it right here. It was absolutely insane. And from that moment on, I knew that God had confirmed that in me. And I just know that there's a reason for everything, right? There's a reason why I made TikTok videos and they semi went viral. All that to be said, there's not one thing that has happened in my life where I would be regretful or I wish that things would have turned out differently, because they all got me to this point, right? Like, I'm just so thankful that things happened the way that they did. I shared about my pornography addiction years ago. I got social media. I was open about my faith. All that stuff has led me to this moment, and I would never change any of it. I would never do any of it different. I never do any of it over. I'd do it the same if I had to do it over, Next question. How do you focus on God and strengthen your relationship with Him after getting out of an unequally yoked relationship? First of all, I'm proud of you. Welcome to the single season. Second of all, I would love to hear your take on just diving into the faith. What does it look like for you to just dive in headfirst into your Bible, into your devotional? What does it look like to totally start serving at church wholeheartedly? And what does that look like for you? That's what I would like to know. Because what are you filling your time with, right? You exit a relationship, period. It doesn't even have to be unequally yoked. A lot of things that you can do for your mental health are like getting good books, right? How do you heal? All those books that I have on breakups are all in my Amazon storefront. But another really big piece of advice is, who are you surrounding yourself with? Are you surrounding yourself with people that are going to build you up or tear you down? Putting yourself around worldly people, those worldly people are going to be like, why did you break up with him? Like, they won't understand, right? Because you were unequally yoked. But at the same time, it's also important to be serving at church, getting involved at church, going and being around good community, building those friends, right? Like, one of the first things that I did after the breakup was I immediately went to church and I immediately started building up my friends, because it's so important not to isolate once you get out of a relationship, whether it's, one-sided or not, whether it's, unequally yoked or not. It's important to never be alone, because once you get alone, you'll start doubting, and then you'll start regretting, and you'll start going down these paths mentally that, like, you'll start being like, wait a minute, I made the wrong decision. Wait a minute. And that's not the case. You didn't make the wrong decision. You're just alone with your thoughts, and the enemy likes to use those over you. How to reapproach resaving yourself for marriage when you're in a relationship with that same person you fell into temptation to. That's a good one. I'm not perfect. I'm waiting until marriage. I have sworn to God, to myself, and, obviously to the public eye, that I'm waiting for marriage. Now, in relationships that I've been in the past, have I been perfect? Have I made mistakes? No, I haven't been perfect. Yes, I made mistakes. And I've crossed lines that I shouldn't have crossed. And there have been conversations that were very hard to have, but conversations of like, I need you to help me keep me accountable. I need you to help keep us accountable, right? Now, there's a line that I believe that the man in the relationship should be doing a lot of the leading in purity. And if he's not, I think that's a deeper conversation of asking, why aren't you? Because as a woman, you should be led spiritually and physically by a man, right, in a relationship. But by the same token, you owe it to yourself to keep yourself accountable, right? But when you're in a relationship, there is a level of the man looking out for you to keep himself and you pure, because you're in a dating relationship with another Christian. You're supposed to be keeping yourself pure for marriage. So he does hold that standard of keeping you pure, and that should be a deeper conversation if he's not. But I think just totally being honest and upfront, like, hey, let's have an honest conversation. I want to stay pure for marriage. I want to put boundaries in place. And I know it's going to be hard, and they're going to be uncomfortable, and they're going to be weird, but I need them in order to thrive. I need them in order to, not fall short, not fall into temptation, not easily get tempted. And if he truly cares about you, if he truly loves you, and he truly is a man of God, he will do that without any complaining. There will not be an ounce of complaining in him. And sometimes you're dating a really good guy, but they just need to be reminded that you need those boundaries, that they need to be stricter, possibly. And that's okay, because a lot of us fall short, and a lot of us are easily tempted, especially if you have a past with certain things. So don't look at it like I'm such a bad Christian, I need strict boundaries. Look at it like I'm proud of myself for setting these boundaries so I don't fall short and, regret it later. What should a woman with deep faith do if she's already in a marriage but realizes that he might not be sent from God because she consistently gets treated poorly? First of all, if you're consistently getting treated poorly in your marriage, I have my own personal view on divorce. A lot of my family has, been riddled with divorce. I have a lot of divorcees in my family. And I had to process a lot of that growing up. Now, me saying that, I think that if two people are unhappy in a marriage, then you have all the right to leave. I don't believe this whole thing of like shaming somebody for getting a divorce. I don't believe that narrative. I think that, yes, God created marriage for one and another person, but if it gets to the point where you need to leave and you're not happy and both of you would be better off separate, I think that you should be separate. Because personally, I've seen it in my life where those two people now are separated and they're so much better off and there's no turmoil anymore than when they were together. If you are in this realization stage of realizing that, like, I don't think he's from God, there should be nothing holding you back from leaving or exploring what that leaving option looks like. But at the same time, if it's something that when you're married, if you have not had that conversation with your significant other of like, I'm feeling X, Y, and Z, or I'm not feeling great about us anymore or whatever, feeling him out too of like, how does he feel about it? I think that's also important because like he deserves to have that too. You know, he deserves to know how you feel. And who knows, you might tell him that and he's like, yeah, I've been feeling like this for a while. You never know. Sorry, I don't know much about marriage, but yeah. Hey, your videos on TikTok about Jesus talk just makes me want to rethink everything. So I spent some days talking and thinking about everything you've talked about, praying on stuff I'm really struggling with and reading my Bible every day, but I'm just struggling and want your opinion. I'm in a relationship with a boy that I've been on and off with, and we've dated for a year and 8 months and then broke up, and then we weren't together for almost a year, but now we're dating again, and it's been 1 year, and it just feels like it's a relationship that's comfortable more than I want this forever. I just want your advice on what I should do because I'm scared if we break up, I don't want to feel like I did the wrong thing or regret it. Okay. Personally, for me, I had the same thoughts and fears of like, once I break up with him, like I'm gonna, regret it. I'm gonna doubt it. I'm gonna be so, far off. I'm gonna be so down bad, like all these things. I think that's a ploy of the enemy to keep you in something that you're not meant to be in longer, because I have never had any of those doubts or worries or anxieties or anything post breakup. If you are having these feelings, and if the fact that you're simply asking somebody that question proves that it is eating at you more than you realize, and that it should be something that you should be thinking about and processing and praying about. Personally, for me, I mean, you didn't say anything that are red flags about him, but the fact that you feel more comfortable and that it's something that it's just kind of maybe a comfort level thing for you, that like, oh, this is just a comfort blanket relationship. There's so much more out there for you than a comfort level relationship. Like, you deserve love, you deserve happiness, you deserve butterflies in your stomach, you deserve like all that stuff. And if you're settling, it's better to be single than to settle. It's better to be single than to settle. Say it again. That's just my 2 cents. Also, I don't know y'all's story. I don't know him as a guy. I don't know anything. But again, communication between you two are important. But then also just knowing that you can be single and it will be okay. And if you're having these doubts, you're having them for a reason. It's not by accident, which I convinced myself for so long. I was like, oh, it's the enemy. Like, it's just Satan, like, giving me all these doubts or whatever. No. You make a video on advice for the girl in a committed 2-year relationship with a non-believer. I'm really struggling with this. I love him and he's amazing, but he's not Christian, and I don't know if he'll ever be a true man of God. I need advice. Again, I'm not God, so I'm not going to say like he's never going to be Christian or whatever. But I do want to ask, does he have the intention of ever becoming Christian? Does he ever have the intention of going to church? Does he ever want to? Is he ever open to the idea? If not, you have your answer of whether or not he wants to be a man of God or not. But if he is, I would just be really patient, but also not waste your precious time playing the savior role in his life if he has no intention of becoming Christian or saved. Again, I don't know y'all's story, so I can't give direct advice, but I want you to know that you are worth finding a relationship that treats you correctly and that is a true man of God, and that y'all are equally yoked than settling for one that is not. Being in a long-term 2-year relationship is scary to get out of, but trust me, I've been in one longer and I've survived, and I'm here and I'm breathing. So don't look at it like a scary thing to break up and then you're single. Think of it, like I said just a few minutes ago, it's better to be single than to settle. Like, I'd much rather be single than settle for something that I'm going to regret later on or wish that I would have gotten with somebody that's equally yoked as me, because being with a non-believer is much deeper than just not sharing a religion. Being with a non-believer means that you're going to see different on a lot of things, on how to raise your kids, on, how your families interact, on what you do on Sundays, your words, your actions, everything. You're going to see not eye to eye on a lot. So that's also important to note too. But again, I'm not God, but that's just my 2 cents. Hi, how are you? I'm doing great. How are you? My name is, I almost said her name. I would like to ask you something. I identify as bisexual and I am attracted to boys and girls. I believe in God, and after a long time, I started talking to him more, praying, and I started to read the Bible. I'm afraid of being condemned for liking women too, and I'm afraid of being a disappointment and a burden to the Lord. I've cried out many times about feeling terrible about it, and I'm afraid that I've disappointed him. Could you give me some advice? First of all, you're not a disappointment to anybody. That's just the enemy wanting to keep you in that lie. I want you to know that this is something that a lot of people struggle with, right? If you go back and you watch episode 2 of my podcast, we talked about somebody struggling with same-sex attraction. And it's real. It's something that a lot of Christians struggle with, but none of them will speak up about it because some of them deem it embarrassing or humiliating or whatever. Things in life happen to us that cause our brain chemistry to be a little bit different, whether it's trauma, whether it's addictions, whether it's whatever. It just happens. It's normal. It's natural. I want to encourage you that you're not alone in feeling like this. And I want you to know that it is possible for you to overcome it, because I've seen somebody in the public eye do so, and I've read her book on it, and I want to encourage you with that. I don't know if you've ever heard of Jackie Hill Perry, but Jackie Hill Perry is one of my biggest inspirations. She's incredible, and I've seen her a few times in person, and I love her. Now, with saying that, she has a book called Gay Girl, Good God, and the book talks about her same-sex attraction. She was once gay and how God changed her life from like a total 180, and she's now married to a man and has kids. And I'm not gonna say that she doesn't struggle with it, because I don't know her personally, obviously, but like has totally changed her heart on it. And I think it's just really important to recognize that Christians do struggle with it, and the more that we speak up and, you know, say something about it, the more that other people will be set free from that bondage. So I want to tell you that it is possible. I don't know if I have that book linked in my Amazon or not, but it's called Gay Girl, Good God by Jackie Hill Perry. Go read it, do some reflecting, and let me know what you think about it, because she talks about the encounter that she had in her room with the Lord about this subject and how he changed her heart on it, and it is truly impactful. So let me know what you think about it, but I would just want to give you the advice that you're not alone, and that there is hope, and that it is possible to set aside the temptations, to set aside the impulses that we have, or the desires that do not match God's heart. It is possible to set those aside and give those to him, and he will heal us throughout that process. Hey Cass, how do I know if what I'm feeling about a guy that is like to be in a relationship is from the Lord, or it's just my hopes, my feelings? You will be very aware very quickly if a relationship is from the Lord or just your hopes and feelings, because if something is long-term from the Lord and he's guiding you into a relationship, you will know in your heart, you will have like a gut feeling, and everything will be peace. Now, if it's not from the Lord, you will feel a sense of urgency, like a lust, like a temporary feeling, and you'll know that your intentions or his intentions are wrong, because you'll have that gut feeling too. I kind of already made a video about this, but you will know him by his fruit, right? You will know if he's a good guy by the way that he acts, by the way he treats his family, by his family unit. You will know, his work ethic by what he does for a living. You will know, his heart by who he surrounds himself with, all these things. If you are attracted to him and what his character is and his fruit, that is, obviously could be very much from the Lord. But if you are attracted to his body, what he looks like, what he talks like, what car he drives, what truck he drives, like him as like what he's doing with his friends, all that stuff, that might be more lust and feelings than it is that, right? I'd also compare it to the Bible in a lot of stances of like, hey, do I actually could I consider myself loving this person for all that they are? Are they kind? Are they all their characteristics? Or is it just a lust thing for me? Am I just attracted to him physically and not emotionally and spiritually, right? This one's on here a few times, but resaving themselves for marriage, is it possible? How to deal with pushback from the majority of people around them for their age. God is the judge, the ultimate judge, right? But he does not judge you in a sense of like, he will never be like, depart from me, I never knew you because you sinned. He will never do that. Or he will never look at you differently or anything like that. We are all sinners. He died for all of our sins, the ones we have already committed, the ones we are committing, and the ones we will commit. Now, when it comes to resaving yourself for marriage, I believe that is his desire when we do fall short, right? Like he wants us to re-promise ourselves to him. He wants us to relive our lives for him. And that is totally possible, because that is a covenant and a promise between you and God. That is something between you and him that nobody could ever separate. Nobody can ever come in between, nothing. Now, I answered it way back in the beginning of a girl, asking if she had been R-worded. What does that mean? That is not tearing your relationship and your promise between you and God, that is a physical action that has been taken against you. It's an offense and has nothing to do with you giving up yourself, right? Saving yourself for marriage looks like simply, God, I'm sorry that I fell short. I'm sorry that I did not wait for marriage, and I want to resave myself for marriage. I promise myself to you, and I promise myself of purity until I get married. And that can look like just a promise. It can look like a promise ring. It can look like a promise bracelet, or it can look like anything, really. And I think that's beautiful. And I think a lot of people discredit that. And the age thing, I don't know if you mean because you're older or younger, but whichever it is, do not listen to anybody on the outside's opinion, because theirs does not matter. The only person's opinion that matters is the Lord, right? Because at the end of our lives, we're not going to be standing at the pearly white gates. It's not going to be your friend Samantha. She's not going to be standing there and being like, so you recommitted yourself a few times, didn't you? Well, like, Samantha, get the frig out of the way. You ain't God. You ain't Jesus. You ain't going to be judging me here. You ain't the one I'm referring to and I'm reporting to. That's Jesus and that's God. Having a relationship with someone who is a different denomination of Christian than you. I think this is interesting because there can be Catholic, there can be, Protestant, there can be Baptist, there can be whatever. I think it just all depends on your own conviction and how you feel about that situation. If you feel a certain way, if you don't like it, if you think that, things are too different. I know Christians and Catholics that date, like Baptists and Catholics that date, and they don't like dating each other. That doesn't last long because they have a lot of different morals and a different belief system, right? A little bit. But then I also know people who are Christian that fall underneath like the Christian umbrella, like Protestant, whatever, that also date Catholics and they're fine. So I think it's just a personal conviction. At the end of the day, if you are so far different, that might be a little bit of a red flag. But again, I think it's your own personal conviction. Hi, Cass. Hi. I was wondering if you could give me your advice from a Christian standpoint on the situation. I've liked a guy for a while and we're currently talking. He's a firm believer and has been a Christian all of his life. However, he struggles with depression and very bad anxiety, and does talk negatively about himself. How can I lift him up or help him realize that God is there for him and that he is made in God's image? Thank you in advance. First of all, I want you to be encouraged that you don't have to always be an encouragement in his life. Now, let me explain. You as an individual in a relationship don't always have to be the one that's pulling up somebody. That's exhausting, right? I would say immediately turn him to God. Turn him to, a good Christian men's Bible study. Turn him to making sure that y'all are going to church. All these things that are important for us to be involved in are just as important for a guy to be involved in, right? I want to make sure that you're not pouring so much out of yourselves that he's kind of pulling you down with him in that negative talk, that you're, maintaining your balance, standing on solid ground. But I get the depression, I get the anxiety, I get all that stuff because I've been there, I am there, I understand it. I would just be really encouraging, and at the end of the day, make sure that you're hearing him when he's talking. There's a lot of times in my past relationship where I said stuff and I was like, I'm feeling really anxious, like whatever. Okay, cool, let's go do whatever. And I'm like, I don't think you're hearing me. I'm really anxious. And it took a while for him to actually hear what I was saying. And so a lot of times, maybe he's struggling with something, or maybe he's, dealing with something or a situation or whatever that is truly just making him anxious, but he doesn't want to tell you, or, he feels a certain way about it or whatever. Turn him to God, turn him to a men's group, get him involved with good Christian, godly men around him, because you can't be the only one that's encouraging him. He has to get that from God. He has to lean on God. He has to lean on, males in his life that are also Christian that can lift him up, because when you're the sole person that's lifting him up, he is going to tend to not listen to you because he's like, oh, that's just my girlfriend, doesn't matter. Like, no, our opinion matters too. By the end of the day, it's easier to not believe us because he's like, oh, well, like, you're kind of paid to say that, like, you're just my girlfriend or whatever. But it's true. He needs a good community of guys. A good Christian community. Can you make a video on how to address a relationship when you're dating a believer, but they have different biblical perspectives? Let's say you're both running the Christian race, right? Like, you're both believers, you're both believing in God. He is running back there, and he doesn't know as much about the Bible. He doesn't go to church that often. He doesn't really care, but he's still a Christian. He's back there. And you're all the way up here. You're in Bible studies. You're teaching Bible study, serving, and you're doing all these things. your biblical perspective is going to be different because you're a little bit deeper in your faith than he is. When you're dating somebody like that, it's always going to be a he's pulling you back, because it's easier to be pulled than it is to pull. Hear me right here. It's easier to be pulled than to pull. Same thing. If I'm all the way back here and I don't know that much about the Bible, and I'm all the way back here and he's all the way up there and he knows a lot about the Bible, let's say, he's going to school for it, he's going to college for biblical wisdom or whatever, and he knows the Bible in depth, and you are like, I enjoy the Bible, I enjoy reading the Bible, I'm a Christian and whatever, I just don't know it that well as he does, and I don't necessarily believe the things that he believes, and we just look at the Bible differently. That is okay. But at the end of the day, if it is causing a divide between you, if it's something that you two can't look past, if it's something that might be troubling for the future, I would highly suggest looking at that and considering that further. There's a reason why you run the pace at the same time. There's a reason why you look for a believer that is equally yoked as you, because there will come a time in your life where you're like, we are equal, right? And sometimes they don't believe that they are. You know what I mean? So like you want to make sure that you're on an equal playing field, but also it's not bad to have somebody that has a different biblical perspective than you, because it may cause you to change your mind about yours. It might cause you to open your eyes to be like, oh wow, I never thought about it like that. Just another way to think about it. Hi Cass. Hey, I saw your video and I just wanted to message you so no one else would see my comment. I love it if you could talk about how to deal with a family member who is living heavily in the flesh. They're constantly gossiping about others and talking about other inappropriate things that I have no interest in. Being around them makes me very uncomfortable now, and I have been getting sudden urges to leave the environment when they come around. Is this normal? I feel like I've been silently suffering because I don't know how to handle it. I've been praying for them, and I don't know what else I can do. They get offended very easily, and it seems like they very much enjoy conflict, which I avoid at all costs. Thank you so much for your time. First of all, I avoid conflict too. I hate conflict. I have family members that are not necessarily Christian. And my biggest piece of advice for you is to continue doing what you're doing. If you were to dim your light in any way, if you were to back away from a challenge, if you were to not involve yourself around these people anymore, what light of Jesus would they have to see and to be a witness to? Now, if this is a situation where like you are feeling uncomfortable and like they are like emotionally or verbally abusing you, then that's different. But if this is a situation where you're like, wait, I think I could be a light to them, I think I can be an example to them, I would say be the example full throttle, right? But at the same time, for your own mental health, if it's not worth your mental health, then it's not worth your mental health and you need to leave that environment. It is normal for someone to feel the urge to want to leave because, duh, if you're uncomfortable, you want to flee, you want to run, right? But at the same time, if this is something that God has put you in a situation for in order to be a light to them, I say all in, baby. I say be reading your Bible out in public. I say, hey, do you mind not saying that? Like, that really makes me uncomfortable. Stay in your ground, set healthy boundaries, and be a light to them. Like, be a witness for them, because God might have put you in that situation just to witness to them, and you never know, right? There's certain people in my family that I don't know if they're believers or not. They don't live a life of a believer, but they might be. I'm not sure. But anyways, at the end of the day, I know that they don't act like one. And there are things that I do that I think go under the radar that they don't notice. And then later, they'll mention it and they'll be like, oh, like when you were reading your Bible the other day. And I'm like, oh, okay, so you are paying attention. So sometimes when we think they aren't, they are. So that's also something cool to like consider, is like you might be a witness to them and you might be showing them Jesus without realizing that you are. You might not see this, but your relationships help me a lot with my relationship with God. I want to hear some advice on how to be okay with being single, especially fresh out of a relationship, and how not to rush into another one. I feel sad sometimes because I'm not in a relationship and I want somebody to love again, but I'm also happy without one right now. I just think it would be interesting to see what the scripture says, and also just your advice. So I already made a video on TikTok about this that's going to be going up in a few days, so I won't touch too much on this, but I do want to say that it is okay to be single. It is okay to be single, to be independent, to love yourself. And what you just said of I want somebody to love yourself. Go out on dates with yourself. Go get lunch by yourself. Go to the library. Do something fun by yourself. I think that's the most important thing that you can do in life, is to become loved by yourself, to love your humor, to want to do things by yourself. All these things, I think it's a beautiful place to be as an individual and as somebody that's becoming independent and mature, because truthfully, you have to love yourself before you can love anybody else. And I know that's a hard pill to swallow, but it's so true. And I think a lot of my relationships have been hindered by the fact that I didn't have the confidence that I needed. I didn't love myself to the extent that I did. And now I'm getting to that point and I'm getting stronger, and there's a reason for your singleness. And so be expectant for what's to come. It is an eager season to know that God has something coming for you, but it's also a sweet season knowing that he gets you all to himself in the season. So stay firm in that. Advice on how to overcome laziness and a lack of motivation. I totally get it. And laziness is something that happens when we become complacent, right? And becoming complacent is something that God never wants us to be, because we're supposed to be walking. We're supposed to be going. Walking with God is an action verb, right? We're supposed to be moving forward. We're supposed to be continuing our walk with Christ. Becoming complacent means I don't need anything. I don't need anybody. I can do this on my own. I'm fine. We should never get to a place like that with God. We should never get to a place like that with ourselves, because we're doing ourselves a disservice. We're not taking care of our temple. We're not taking care of our body. We're not taking care of our mental health. We're not growing ourselves. We're not seeing a need for change, and we're becoming complacent and bored, and we're fine, and we don't have the effort or the motivation to do anything. And if that's where you've become, if that's where you're at, I pray that you really take the time to pray about this, to bring it to God, and to make healthy habits in this new year. Hey, I'm going to wake up every morning at 6 o'clock and spend, 30 minutes with God, and then work out for 30 minutes. Or, hey, I'm going to spend less time on my phone in the new year, or whatever it is. Start healthy habits, because I think it's 21 days, 24 days, in an amount of almost a month, you will create habits that will last forever. They will become routine, permanent habits for you. I would love it if you could talk about how to get better and more consistent with prayer. I feel like I'm awkward, don't know what to say, and I struggle with consistency. I feel like a lot of people put pressure around this idea of prayer, of you have to sit down and you have to, you have to pray a certain way. You have to have an outline for your prayers. You have to, make sure that you're talking to him in the morning and talking to him at night or whatever. I personally don't have that. I talk to him when I'm in the car. I talk to him while I'm getting ready. I talk to him while I'm making breakfast. I talk to him while I'm cleaning. I pray in the car while I'm driving and yelling at people, and then I continue my prayer. I'm very an avid, what do they call that? A lucid talker or whatever. I loosely talk to God all throughout the day. I don't think there's one moment where I get down on my hands and knees and I'm like, Lord, unless it's a very serious, reason or whatever. But I'm I never actually closing my hands and closing my eyes and getting down on, my knees and being like, Lord, there's a lot of things that keep me busy throughout the day, but incorporating Jesus into them is what's important, right? Do it throughout the day. Make it fun, right? When you're unloading the dishwasher, hey, Lord, I just wanted to talk to you. Make it like a friendship. There's no specific outline of how God wants you to talk to him. He just wants you to talk to him, right? He is our friend. He's our dad. So sitting here at the counter and me just being okay, look, what is going on? Because I'm feeling X, Y, and Z, and I don't know why. And that is a prayer. That is a simple prayer. And you should never feel shame for praying like that, because you're having a conversation with your dad. You're having a conversation with your best friend and with your God. And there should never be a moment where you feel shame about that. And he does not judge our prayers. When I'm in the car and I'm Lord, I love you. And I'm not closing my eyes while I'm driving, obviously. But I'm Lord, I love you. And you're so good. And okay, can you please move over? Lord, that's what my prayers look like some days, and that's okay, and he loves it, and he just wants you to talk to him, period. Don't put so much pressure on what they look like and what they sound like, and making sure that look okay. Just talk to him. Seriously, just talk to him. Just start a conversation with him, and everything will flow after that. How to overcome loneliness, especially having social media around and peers getting attached to. Being lonely is something that is really, really hard to overcome, and that comes with singleness, right? It comes with being lonely, and it can happen in relationships too, when you're in a relationship you don't want to be in or whatever. At the end of the day, I really want to encourage you with finding somebody that makes you not lonely, whether that's spending more time with God, whether that's filling your time with things that make you happy, or whether that's finding a friend. Whatever that looks like, I encourage you to find that in the new year, because there are things that can take up your time that won't make you lonely. Involving yourself in church, serving at church, or coming home and doing a hobby that you really like, and all these things, falling in love with yourself, right? Setting goals, doing things, working hard at your goals and your ambitions in life will make it to where you don't feel lonely anymore, but you feel like you are busy all the time. Somebody asked, who's your favorite cousin? You already know who asked that. Sadie. Do you have a dream job? What would it be? This one's fun. Okay. My dream job is actually what I'm doing now. I think in a different world, I would have loved to work for J. Crew and their fashion merchandising, or J. Crew and their social media department or something like that. I think anything in fashion and retail would have been so much fun. but I work for an anti-pornography company, and I work in their affiliate program, and I run their affiliate program, and this is quite literally my dream job. I get to talk about my faith, and it's a Christian company, and it's just incredible. So I think I'm working at my dream job, which is pretty cool to say at 23. 5-year goals. Oh Lord, I would love to have my license in either nutrition or personal fitness, like a fitness trainer. I would love to do that because I feel like there are girls like me that have no idea what they're doing, but they just love a personal trainer that's not strict and that's not a guy and whatever. So I'd love to do that. I'd love to get my certificate or whatever, however that works in that. I'd love to maybe switch positions in my company, jobs in my company, but stay at my company and just continue to work and travel more with work, I think. Travel more independently, like by myself, like go on more trips by myself. Gain more friends. I'd love to have more friends in 5 years. 5 years from now, I'd be 26 or something. I'd be 28. Oh gosh. I don't know. 5 years from now, I guess maybe engaged. Maybe married. I don't know. Engaged or married. Dating. Hopefully. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe God doesn't want me dating. I don't know. Dating, engaged, married. I would hope. Or, I mean, by God's grace, maybe I'd be pregnant or something, you know, like I could get married in the next few years. I don't know. That's kind of crazy. I'm not going to put that time limit. I'm not going to even speak that out, but who knows what could happen, right? Way closer with God, walking way closer with God. I'd love the podcast to be up and like crazy. I love it to be thriving. Honestly, I love the podcast to be up and thriving. I would love for it to get to a place where I do it very often and I have incredible guests on, and I would just love for it to get to that point. I would love for my social media to be thriving too, where I'm using it for God's glory. I would love to write a book. I'd love to have a book written by then. Maybe a devotional and a book, who knows? And maybe a dog. I think I'd love to have a dog. I don't know, maybe not. I'm so independent, I don't know. But that was a really cool question. Okay, y'all, that was all the questions that I had for today, and now it's time for me to finish this Coke right here and go to my grandma's house for Christmas Eve. So I hope you guys have such a Merry Christmas. I love each and every one of you, and if your question didn't get answered, trust me, there will be another Q&A up soon, I promise. And if there's anything that you'd like to DM me, know that I will read it and potentially address it in a video. I just can't answer all of your DMs because there are quite a few. But I love you guys so much, and I will see y'all on the next episode of Not For Nothing. Bye, y'all.